The new age of good and bad, the scientific version of good and bad, the moral version of good and bad is dead. It was all a lie, the psychological basis of what makes a good life. Vital introduction to my theory on good and bad. When I struggled with severe depression, then I heard many people say that you can live a good life if you still choose to help others and do great things in your life anyway. The very first thing that came to my mind was, who invented this? Whoever came with the idea that a severely crippled, depressed person who can hardly function is still living the good life. It was right then and there that I highly suspected the moral version of good and bad to be fake. So that is how I came up with this whole entire theory of mine. Now science is the only way to prove or disprove something, but it has never been proven or disproven through science if the moral version of good and bad is fake, and that there really is a scientific version of good and bad, or if the moral version of good and bad is real. If a person struggles with depression and thinks that his or her life is nothing good or worth living at all, then a supporting person would come up to him or her and say, "Your life can still be good and worth living. Look, you still have a family and you still have your goals and dreams to focus on. But to say that a depressed and or anhedonic person's life can be good and worth living through the moral version of good would be no different than saying that it is a proven fact that a depressed and or anhedonic person's life can be good and worth living. This is because to say the phrase 'it can' is no different than saying it is a proven fact. But since it was never a proven fact that the moral version of good can make us and our lives good, since science has not proven this, then people are just believing in the moral version of good and bad like a religion. It would be no different than how people say there is a God and an afterlife. You cannot say there is because science has not proven that there is. It was never proven whether there is or is not a God and afterlife. It is the functioning of our brains that defines us as human beings in the first place. It is not our personal moral opinions that make things true or false. Therefore, that is the reason why it would all have to come down to science to look at our brains and see if there really is a scientific version of good, our pleasant emotions that make our lives good and worth living. Everything all comes down to science, even moral and philosophical questions. For example, if you had money and you asked yourself the question, should I use this money to buy myself that thing I wanted? Should I use this money to help that poor person on the street? Or should I use it to help my family? What is the right good thing to do? Then this would all actually come down to science. It all comes down to the functioning of our brains. What is going on in your brain is that you are asking the question of, what is it that I want and like to do? You are perceiving different stimuli. You are perceiving the innocent stimulus of your family, the innocent stimulus of that poor person on the street, and you are perceiving the stimulus of that thing you wanted. So what you are really asking yourself here is, which stimulus has the most dominating factor in my brain? Therefore, it is whatever stimulus that has the more wanting and liking to you that would be of the most good value and worth to you. So if you wanted and liked that item, and you wanted it and liked it more than your family and that poor person, then that item would be the right good thing to you from your perspective.